If everyone could join us in the sanctuary, we'd like to begin the informational session. Thank you. Thank you for staying for this informational session. I really appreciate it. I want to acknowledge the members of the Strategic Planning Committee who have worked so hard to put together this report together. I also want to thank folks who have stayed and joined us by live stream. We really appreciate your attendance here. It's a beautiful day. We know that there are lots of other things that keep you, but we feel that this is an important day in the church's life. We believe that this is this whole process will help set us on an appropriate path. And a word before we begin. One of the things that you noted for this particular interim report is this report was shared by a link to files. Okay, this is something that we, both as the Church Council, as the Strategic Planning Committee, are on a sort of campaign to try to reduce paper and also to make life a little bit easier to keeping track of emails. So a lot of the documents that will be coming out, both for this particular committee as well as moving forward in Church Council, will be shared electronically. You may choose to print them out if you want to, but excuse me, you may also free as a result of the investments by the church through the trustees and the technology committee. There's now Wi-Fi throughout the church, so you can bring your devices, you can get it on your phone, just makes it a little bit more convenient, and we feel much more environmentally conscious. So that's the way that's how we're going to be moving forward. Chris, could you put the slides up, please? Nobody really wants to see me. I'll be joined here, obviously, by Matt and Becky. Becky co-chairs this committee along with us. Matt is a member. We'll be walking through this a little bit. Most of the members who are in town on the Strategic Planning Committee are here. They will amplify and provide answers to questions that I can't, or Becky or Matt cannot. Next slide, please. Oh, yes, sorry. Hi.
I will say it, hopefully, if you're trying to get on. It's Asbury with a capital A at the @ 1784. That's in honor of Francis Asbury, who was ordained, was consecrated a bishop in 1784. You get a history lesson along with it. Asbury with a capital A at 1784.
And is it KUMC balcony?
You can get, yes, KUMC balcony is probably the best one in here. There's several available now. You might get kitchen or back office in here too. Balcony is probably the best.
Yeah, so I'm not going to read these slides, but the words will be up there. Just so that you can understand where we're coming from and what the Strategic Planning Committee is doing. There's obviously a motivation to do this particular planning process, and the work that's being put into it is really to try to plot a course forward that ensures the enduring future of the church, in recognition of the fact that both we have serious structural, demographic, and financial challenges. And we also recognize the profound transformations in our community. So the overall goal of the Strategic Planning Committee is to meet these challenges head on so that we can grow disciples in our church. Next slide will show you who's part of this. There's almost, in fact, I'm looking around the room, probably pretty much everybody else who's sitting in this room has at least been contacted or is actually a functional member of a subcommittee. So again, I thank you for your participation. We had as we mentioned at the last forum, we have had strong help by two professional consultants who have really provided us with not only methodologies and structure for this process, but also served as some of the most effective cheerleaders that I've ever worked with in my entire life. I learned so much during this process, not only about the congregation and the church, et cetera, but also about how to make an effective, how to do an effective planning. And I think that will serve us as we move forward, not only for this particular process, but for all processes as we think about moving in the church. Next slide. We've done quite a few things, and what really we're going to do today is we're going to have a brief review of the accomplishments, not only, so this is just an outline of the presentation that we'll be talking about today. What's gone on here, we have the 5 key areas, we've charged subcommittees, and we'll be reviewing the subcommittees' accomplishments and recommendations as we move through this particular this particular presentation. Next slide. This just is the additional, so these key area subcommittees have been working diligently. As I said, most of you have been involved in one way, shape, or form in these subcommittees, and we still invite folks to be part of this. I did remove a slide right at the end that said, how can you help? You can help by helping us. And so we're still looking for input. There's lots of things. This is an all-church effort. We're just leading the effort. We're pulling the cart a little bit, but we really want everybody in the cart. I'm going to invite Becky and Matt to Mackie and Bet. That was great. To say introduce and say a few words about this before we get deeply into the presentation.
The strategic planning is a chance to look at ourselves and look at where we're going for the future, who we are and who we want to be, and how can we get there is kind of the theme that we've been working on. It started because the process was initiated because we kind of looked at a financial deficit for this year, but that's not what this is all about. We're actually running a balanced budget this year so far. People have been generous. They've stepped up. We made the need known, and people have answered that. So the hole that we were afraid we were falling into is still not. We have not approached that hole, and we hope that it will continue. I know I increased my giving. I know many others have increased their giving, and hopefully that will continue. We've been looking at some things that we could accomplish right away. What the committee has been calling low-hanging fruit, things that we could accomplish at little cost, but with some effort. Things like opening up a space in the sanctuary, creation of a welcome center, rearrangement to a certain extent anyway of the library. By the way, the parlor is contracted to be repaired, so we hope to have the parlor back very soon. That wasn't part of the strategic planning process, but people have been asking, so I thought I'd tell you. We also recognize that we have to evaluate what kind of staffing patterns we have in the church. I have shared with the Staff Parish Relations Committee, with the Strategic Planning Committee, and I've casually mentioned it to others in the church. I will be retiring a year from now, and therefore there will be a change in the appointment of a pastor, and now is a time when we can look at what the leadership structure of the church is going to look like. when we met with the consultants the first time, I told them, you know, this is what's going to be happening. At that point, I wasn't sure I would be retiring then, but I will be. And so it's a time that we get to look a year ahead at what that's going to look like. But we're going to have to tell the bishop and others as early as this fall. So we have to start planning those things as well. And those things, that part of the strategic plan has not been worked out yet. But I just wanted to share that with you at this time.
I think what I want to say is that at the core of this all is about sharing Jesus' love with all. We are reconciling church, and it is we're focused on caring for one another, and we're focused about reaching out into the community and sharing that love that we know with all. So as we go through this, we are looking at how to align our resources, how to align our ministries and programs, how to turn the ship ever so slightly so that we can continue to do what we are called to do, and that is to make disciples by sharing God's love. That is by including everyone. And you'll see that as we go through the various subcommittees, it's about aligning us for today and tomorrow. And that may cause us to shift from what we know. It'll cause us to look at what change needs to be put in place. But know that everything is about us preparing for today and tomorrow. There are things that are so part of this tradition, this beautiful tradition here, that will stay in place. We're tweaking things. And so understand that we're tweaking as we tweak, as you see some of the pews removed to meet and gather. Those tweaks are for the purpose of shifting so that we can continue to share the love of Christ now and in the future. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, pastors. Chris, if you could put up the mission vision slide, please. And if you could just go to the next, because that's an animated slide. There we go. So what Pastor Becky just talked about is the alignment of our missions, ministries, programs, building structures, retention, the 5 key areas that we identified with these mission visions and our goals. So this is our North Star both as a committee and as a congregation. And so everything that we are doing is being reflected in these and being reflected through this lens of these mission visions and goals. This was probably the most significant piece of work that we did in the committee, and we really feel that this encapsulates who we are as a congregation. And so everything that we've done in terms of accomplishments, everything that we recommend is in service to achieving this, to fulfilling these goals so that we can achieve our mission and realize our vision. So the first thing that we did, Chris, next slide, was in order to identify what we needed to do as a congregation, we did what is known as a SWOT analysis. And again, I'm going to briefly just roll through these slides. The full report, which includes all the background on the analysis and how this actually was done and what it means, again, is in the full report. Please read that as you get a chance. Excuse me. We obviously have a lot of strengths, and number one is our spirit of mission and our mission programs. One of the things I will say personally that I learned through this is just the overwhelming, in fact, inspiring number of missions and programs that we have as a church.
25 of them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of programs and missions and ministers.
Yes. So, and for a and these are not, they're not just, we went to the Vagabonds. I was, in Michigan last week. It's not just fun stuff, although that is part of it. But these are significant impacts both in our community and to us in service of bringing people into a relationship with God through Jesus. So we know that we know a lot of our strengths. We are in an excellent position. We have a preschool with a supportive director. These are our long-standing traditions in this church. We all know what our strengths are. Next slide. Our weaknesses, unfortunately, are also as obvious. We have a slightly aging congregation. When I got here, I didn't have gray hair, as is most of us. I won't say that the coming to church made me have gray hair, but it's, so as a consequence of that aging congregation, we have several challenges that occur there. We have Sunday school participation for both in the children and youth, limited number of members in the middle, sort of happy middle of the congregation. A lot of us, you look around on leadership committees, we're all seeing each other the same time. So everybody who is in leadership on multiple committees, and that creates a lot of fatigue among us. And it also creates an issue with bringing folks in because they feel that there might be too much work to do. So we're trying to find a way to, one of the things that's our challenge is to actually work our way through this. We're not through these, we're reflecting against all of these challenges to try to find ways to fix them to fulfill our mission, vision, and goals. And I think you can see some of the other ones. Many of these are near and dear to are very obvious to us. We all know them, but putting them in a list and creating this list really puts it in front of us, and how can we solve problems until we name the problem. Once we name it, we can solve it. Next slide, please. We have tremendous opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities. We are, as Becky said, we are a reconciling congregation. We have a church building that can welcome and house a lot of different programs. It's interesting to manage in some ways, and the trustees and Dawn in particular have taken a leadership role in thinking about how we can rearrange and use our building the best way. We have a tremendous opportunity with digital media to reach people. We're doing that, I hope, now with some of the folks who are live streaming. And next slide. And these are our threats. We don't like change. I don't like change. None of us do, right? Because it's not comfortable. But we need to change. We have a lot of things that we need to do because we know the things that we've been doing have not really, while they're working for some of us, they're not working for all. Capital ALL underline. And that's where we really want to go. And so I think we already know what our threats are. And we are working in the committee, and we want input from you about how we can meet these threats. And I'm going to invite Becky and Matt to comment on the SWOT analysis if they have anything you want to add.
Like you said, to name it is to be able to address it. It also helps us measure certain things. It also helps us put budgeting things in place to identify where we are not addressing our threats, where we are not growing, and to identify resources. Identify how our budget will realign with where we are going. When we say diversity, I'm looking around, and we are primarily a white congregation, and we look to represent all of God's beautiful children. Because without diversity, is there really unity? Unity requires diversity. And so there are many ways and things, and it will take us time to be able to reach out in different ways. But I'll tell you, the people on this team and this congregation, you've been a blessing for years, and that's not going to stop. We just have to figure out how to bless people in different ways, through different means.
Right. The other thing, right now, the list of threats is up there. The threats are, we do this with the knowledge that those things are in front of us, but these are not things that are necessarily holding us back. It just means that we have to do ministry in the light of these things. We do resist change, but doesn't mean we can't change. Also, some of our strengths are also our weaknesses. I don't know if you saw, but the building is on both the strengths, which we have a wonderful building that it has lots of different spaces and lots of different ways to use it, and yet it's a big old building that needs to be taken care of. So it's both a strength and a weakness and an opportunity, and maybe it's a threat. The trustees are very much keeping an eye on it and very much taking care of it. But it is, it is all those things. It is the greatest tool we have. The personnel and the personnel and the building are the biggest things we spend money on. But that's because the building provides for so much space for all the various ministries we have, and the time of the staff is spread out across many, many different ministries.
So now I'd like to just briefly walk through some of the individual committee findings and accomplishments and recommendations. So Dawn Newton led the building and structures teams. The members of the team essentially included the entire trustees group. And so, again, this is one of these naming things, and this is one of the things that, I've been involved in a lot of the committees around the church, SPRC, trustees, et cetera, and church council. And one of the things that I recognized as I've gone through this process is that there's so many things that we have to deal with in each of these individual committees that we don't, until we have put them all in front of us, we don't actually keep them in our mind. So one of the things that Dawn has really done for us is really inventoried, cataloged, and identified what needs to be done in the building. Then this will be part of actually, we're going to continue to actually publicize and keep this in front of the congregation, and we're going to start actually paying attention on a timely basis, what needs to be, what has been done, and really begin to prioritize what needs to be done based on what we need to do to support our ministries and programs. So, next slide is what the accomplishments were, and this is the recommendations. We want to continue with the cleanup. Dawn is working on this documentation so we can actually keep track of what's being done and what has been done. We're going to think about space utilization, because we have a big problem with storage, and individual ministries belong in certain places that may not be where they are right now. And so we're trying to figure out best ways to do that. And then, obviously, the big bottom line is researching costs. And so one of the things that the trustees and the Strategic Planning Committee will do is basically name the problem, put dollar values on these things, and then as we move forward as a congregation, we will decide what we need to do, both from what needs to be done and what can be done both from a financial and ministerial perspective. Next slide was the work from the Finance Committee, and the leaders of that committee included Chris Laux, Tom Vogt, and Cindy. Chris did a tremendous job on tracking our giving. We understand where we are now. Again, this puts us together, and we know exactly where we have been and where we need to go. Again, the full trend analysis and financial analysis, both of income and expenditures, is in the full report. The good news is, and Matt mentioned this earlier, the income that we have had is just from giving is actually keeping pace with our expenditures. In fact, I think the latest financial report that I have in front of me puts us, I think, about 10,000 to the good right now in June, halfway through the year. We have not had to, as yet, touch the pledges that we have received from both from the restricted accounts, which amounts to about $45,000, nor have we included, I don't think we've in the latest financial statement did it include the Easter alternative funds. So so right now we are in meta-stable shape. Obviously something, yeah,
There must be a scientific word.
Yes, so we're stable. If something really bad happens, we're in big trouble, but we're praying that nothing really bad happens. And I think we're doing, and Dawn and the trustees are charged with not having really bad things happen to the church. So yeah, so we're in good. I think we're in a position where we can really look, instead of looking down at our shoes, we can really look now at the horizon and begin to use this opportunity that we've been given by our generous congregation to plan for the future for a sustained financially stable church. The recommendations from finance really are, I think, really strong, fiscally responsible changes to the way that we do business in terms of budgeting. We're kind of putting carts before horses. I kind of like that metaphor all of a sudden. My other strategic planning processes that I've been working with at work, we have a cart and horse metaphor there too. So it's just, it turns out to be very interesting. We're thinking about a mission fund drive. And part of this will be in concert with all of once we go through the strategic planning process, and what is that we need to do to actually fulfill our mission? What investments above and beyond sustaining what we currently do we need to invest in? The last recommendation here is, as Matt mentioned, in concert with the SPRC and the SPC, we need to explore the benefits, consequences, and configurations of what a reduced staff might be. We're just going to start exploring what this could be. Betty, these will all be in the box. This will be shared as a file, so you don't have to take pictures, although I feel you. I do this all the time at meetings. And so so these are the sort of nitty gritty about how we're going to continue to move forward as a congregation. And I'll invite Matt and Becky to comment on the building and structures and finance slides as before we move a little bit forward.
One of the things that came out of this is when we look at missions and programs, we look at them separately, right? How much does it cost to have our food pantry? How much does it cost to run the but what we don't do is plug in your staffing costs to support the missions and the programs. And as we put together our new budget, it's one of the things we need to look at. Right now we look at the cost of buildings, we look at the cost of staff, and then we look at mission and programs and we go, wow, we don't spend much on mission and programs. Maybe it's just the building and staff. But in fact, you need the building and staff plugged into the cost of doing missions and programs. And that's why when we talk about a mission fund drive, that's what it's about. It's about what all goes into the missions and outreach we have. If our vision is for everyone to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, how do our missions work in terms of their costs to do this? You see how it's different than just looking at a price for our staff, a price for our buildings, and then missions and programs, which we said was like 5% of what we actually spend. No. Add them all towards what is it for us to be doing mission work and ministry? What is the cost for you to have staff in a building in order to care for one another, in order to care for our community? It'll be a different budgeting process.
And it will begin soon. One of the things that we need to do as a church is we need to have an understanding of what income we have before we make financial commitments. And so Chris is working on a process for this, a budget manual that will go through finance. And so finance obviously needs to resolve and approve these recommendations, but I think we're almost pretty much already there.
And that mission manual is to train leaders of various ministries, because we've never done this before. We've never done our budget and looking what our needs are before we put our budget together. So there will be training and a manual. So if some of you are sitting there going, well, I don't know how to do that, we'll do it together.
I want you to hear the good news that's in the finance part. That we began with an alert on our finances. The congregation stepped up. We made a plan for covering ourselves should we need it. So far we haven't needed to. because people have stepped up and responded to the alert. So I want you to hear that. The other is that we are looking into the cost of some things, but we're doing that at least in part because we want to enter into seeking grants for a number of things. And in order to do that, you have to have a value on things. You have to be able to tell the people who are giving you a grant what it's going to cost. So sometimes you'll hear about us, seeking quotes on something. That doesn't mean because we're going to do it right now. We just need to know what it would cost to do it, and often we have to come up with a portion of it, and people who have grant money will give us some additional for that. So if you hear about things, they're looking for a quote on painting the library or on carpet for the whole church. We need to know these things. We need to know the cost of these things before we can seek ways to pay for it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I completely forgotten about the grant portion. One of the benefits of working with the consultants is they've given us a fairly thick book of grant opportunities for which churches are eligible. A lot of them have to do with accessibility. A lot of them have to do with food ministries. A lot of them, and also other missions that we are already involved in. So we don't. Again, just one second, Faith. We come at all of this. As Becky reiterated, we'll be coming at all of our spending from a missional perspective, rather than just we got money. We have to pay these people. What do they do? It's just a totally different thing. Yes, Faith.
Yes, and I just want to say that Jerry and I are kind of heading up a grant writing opportunity. And if you have experience writing grants, see one of us. Because the more people who we can get together to do this, then we can move through this process a wee bit quicker and grab hold some of those funds.
Thank you, Faith. Next slide, please, Chris. Can you have the next slide, Chris? There we go. So next was the technology group. This is one of our great opportunities, we think, as a congregation. Investments in technology will pay benefits not only for current members, but for spreading the word of God throughout our community and indeed throughout our country and potentially around the world. We have a strong outreach. We've cobbled together a good live streaming platform. We need to enhance that, right? Each of us can stay connected with our church no matter where we are now. Fantastic, okay? Think about that 8 years ago. Right, just the mind boggles, but that's besides the point. Okay, so we've already done, Mike, through the efforts of Mike and the technology team, many of whom are sitting up there, and a lot of that's the youth. We have a new website, if you've not explored it. We are still learning the benefits and using the opportunities that are part of that website that we just didn't have before. And so additional information will be appearing where the technology committee is figuring out how we want to best approach communication strategies electronically. As we said, we've never had Wi-Fi throughout the church. Now we do. This was step one, by the way. We're hoping to be able to have a more integrated and seamless transition throughout the church. So you'll see that as we grow forward. And then on the recommendation side, next slide, please. We have a lot of things that we would like to do. Many of you recall that we used to have sort of FM transmitters for people who are hearing impaired. Many of us also shared in that hearing impaired, even though we were hearing okay with the feedback. That all died several years ago, so we don't have anything to help for guests. We've identified a technology that might be helpful for that and would really result in and actually this is a major sort of number one granting opportunity for the church. We have a soundboard that requires, an octopus to run in the sanctuary. We'd like to upgrade that. We'll need to do a little bit of work on our speakers, just so that it makes it, even though the acoustics in here are really quite good, we need to be able to fix those a little bit. We want to be able to reach out more effectively to our members. And so we're exploring now a way of contact management, and that's really a wonderful opportunity for us. You want to...
Yeah, the contact management systems we're looking at are meant for churches. And so it'll be by text mainly. So we can also send out messages by groups that you're interested in. We can send out text messages. I can send out a message to the preschool team. I can send out a message to all those who are in our Spark. I can send out a message, and so the leaders of various ministries maybe be able to text everyone about what's going on with New Beginnings. So we've come to a point with our technology and society that people aren't looking at their emails unless it's documents and long discussions. It's in our text, and so we'll have technology and application to more easily have your staff and your ministry leaders to send messages to you, so you don't have to look various places to find things.
So we also want to enhance, because of so many people are participating in our live stream experience, we want to be able to enhance that live stream experience. We have some while they work, we have some fairly old cameras. We don't have the capability for dynamically moving the cameras around, so we're exploring that kind of thing. Again, another significant grant opportunity. We need to rationalize our social media. We also need to add Instagram as a platform. However, this is as almost everybody in this room, millennials and further on, people who are born after sort of 2000-ish, those folks are digital natives. The rest of us just visit. Okay, so we're looking for folks who can help us manage and rationalize our social media. We're also looking, and we have an opportunity to identify and bring on board in the fall, and maybe perhaps later this summer, an intern to help us build a social media campaign. This is one of the things that the Technology Committee and the Strategic Planning Committee overall is looking for.
And we still need content from all of you. There's something going on that within the church or an outreach. We need your content, but there'll be a way for somebody to manage and organize that.
But also interact with what's out there on our social media, because the more you interact, the more it gets out to those in your contacts or in your circle.
Yeah, so
You may see it, you may know it, but you need to interact with it.
yeah, so
For those of us who are interacting online right now, Jessica didn't come through probably, she's telling us to interact with our social media and with our website, and that increases our footprint on social media, and we're looking to expand and to reach out in different ways, but also to expand the ways we're already reaching out, and you can help do that.
yeah,
Like us.
Like us. If you like us, it helps.
So if you remember the idiotic Facebook, like us on Facebook, yeah, do that. Because that actually matters. Because the more you interact on Facebook, the more friends who you are friends with know and will be receiving information about Kenmore United Methodist Church programs, and it's an ever-expanding circle. We'll be doing similar things as we move into different platforms. We've chosen not to interact in certain platforms, but members of the Technology Committee can actually, will take your input.
And the trustees are working on these. They're cooperating and integrating their work with these things. We do have funds that have been donated specifically for some of these technologies, and we have not completely spent those yet. So we are. So that this is not impacting our overall financial situation. because there's dedicated funds for technological upgrades here in the sanctuary and for online presence.
Great. So next slide, Chris. Perfect. Okay. So recruitment and retention, this was headed up by Jessica and Faith. I tailed along. There was several other folks who were also involved in this committee, and we had some very, very interesting discussions. What have we accomplished? Well, you can see that we have tried to build out this welcome center, and Jessica's working on staffing that as well as providing the content that goes along there, in keeping with our mission to not kill many trees. A lot of the stuff will be based and available via QR codes, and we'll be able to get online. That's also shareable, et cetera. So we're moving towards a technologically savvy church and congregation. We've devised a strategy to who's sitting next to you. Oh, that person's missing. So there are a lot of folks who who left us during the pandemic. We need to invite them back. We need to have them feel the energy that I feel every time I walk in this church now. The new energy that I see and the new programs that we have. If they've become disconnected from us, they don't know about this. And so we've put together, Faith has put together a nice elevator speech. What we're looking for there are the names of individuals whom you're wondering, where did they go? So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute out an email that can be where you can send that information to the Strategic Planning Committee directly. That will go out along with the link to this PowerPoint. So, and also I'm going to invite any kind of input that you wanted to put to that strategic planning email on this presentation and on the entire process. If you wanted to email that to us, that would be great, and then we can, all the committee will have access to that group of emails. So I think one of the biggest things that we've done, and this is thanks to Jessica and Mike, and Becky wrote what I thought was an eloquently stated letter announcing us as a lighthouse church. And I'm going to let Becky take that.
So a lighthouse, of course, is a place of safety, right? People who are lost in the storm or whatever, perhaps lost in the storm of disaffiliation. When I went to conference, I spoke to many people whose churches were disaffiliating and they felt lost because they didn't follow those values. They followed a value of welcoming all and affirming all. And so what we have done is we've proclaimed ourselves a lighthouse church. And the lighthouse church idea came from the
North Carolina.
So the North Carolina conference. And as we proclaim ourselves as staying UMC, we be #BeUMC. And for those people whose churches are disaffiliating and going a more ultra-conservative way, what we've done is invite them a safe harbor, a place where they could gather with the other people from the churches, from the church that want to be UMC. We've offered people a place who live in the area to come and join us because we are a reconciling church. And so this lighthouse idea of being a lighthouse church, when I was at annual conference, a couple people asked me about that, and I sent out that letter to all of the deacons and many people who asked me across our conference, and it's popping up all over their websites. So we welcome all, and we're here to help people in this storm of disaffiliations, to say we're here to support you. Whether you need a place to gather, and maybe start up a new church, whether you need a place to find a new home, a spiritual home. So that's catching on, and I was delighted to be part of the many people who brought that forward. And we can welcome the Nichols family as they decided to be UMC and came to be our new members, along with their family.
So next slide. So the recruitment and retention committee, I will say that the recommendations of this committee stretch 2 pages. You can read all of them in the report, but I just highlighted a few here. Obviously, we need to complete, and we invite you to help us on on gathering our lost sheep. We need to expand our Radical Hospitality Committee in order to more effectively welcome folks who are seeking a new church home or need a safe harbor as they move away, as they weather the storm of disaffiliation. Jessica is spearheading a new creation of new materials to provide information. Again, almost all of this will be available electronically. So if you're at home, it's like, oh, geez, I left that at church, or I lost it, or I threw it out. You should be able to get it, no matter what. And then create an action committee to try to publicize more effectively what we're doing in our church, not only to our members, not only people who are attending, but even out into the community. And so we're working on ways to, we're brainstorming, we're in the brainstorming session about how to make that better and make that work. Okay, so next slide. So the Ministries and Programs Committee, which I will dare to say are our heart and soul of our congregation. This committee was headed up by Marcy O'Brien and Becky. And I will say, I think you said 25?
I did.
But I think you wrote 22 in my email.
So there's 3 that we decided were self-sustaining and vital for our fellowship. So we took those out, and that was Peacemakers,
Women of Faith, United Women of Faith.
UWF, Peacemakers, and our Craftsmen, UWF, and our Vagabonds. We took those out, and then we looked at 22 of the ministry programs. We created an alignment sheet of how those various 22 ministries or programs align with our new mission, vision, and our goals, and then we prioritize them across, let's continue to strengthen those ministries, let's tweak those ministries, or let's revise and revisit those ministries. For a particular listing of all 22 and how they were ranked, please look at the full ministry report because we don't have time to go through all of them. You want to talk? Okay. We wanted to implement changes. Part of one of those that really kept coming up is to affirm and to financially support and to spiritually support the Spark ministry. We're up to 16 people, and it is a growing, it's almost like I wouldn't want to call it like a dinner worship time. This is where we're seeing new people come to our church. This is where you're seeing younger people. But Spark is for all those who affirm the Spark beliefs. And I've said it a million times, but that would be to be seeking God, to be progressive, to be accepting, to be respectful, and kindness. It's an alternative worship that we will be launching this August. As far as we still meet and gather 2 times a month, we will then be having a worship service starting Friday nights, beginning in August, once a month. Other things, our preschool is really one of the gateways, one of the many gateways into growing Spark and into growing the church. Our preschool program is on fire. We have a waiting list. We are doubling in size. We have a preschool director who we have a program for music to bring all the preschool kids and their families into worship once every 6 weeks. So, and because they're on fire, they're also going to have a profit that will feed back into our general fund. Seneca Street is one of the things, the Seneca Street meal is one of the things we determined needs to be revamped, and we've done that. We will not be making meals here. We will be collecting volunteers to go down there and support them because now they have their own chefs down there and their own communities. So you'll be seeing some tweaks and some changes and some areas where we are going to lift up and affirm more so, returning the ship ever so slightly. You want me to talk about I did talk about that. Next slide. Oh, I just lost my slides.
It's just what you said in the CTS.
Oh, okay. And there's something we've done already? Nope, I think we're done.
So, next slide, Chris. So so this is where we are right now. Okay, the committee has made a series. I think we've had a significant set of accomplishments. We've made some recommendations, and we'll be moving forward on those. Each committee has a set of priorities that probably spans as long as your arm. And what we need to be able to do is those subcommittees are going to be working on prioritizing, evaluating, costing, both in terms of ministry as well as building need as well as funding, and begin to try to work together to align all of that stuff with our mission, vision, and goals. So this is truly an interim report. We know where we're going. We just need to figure out where we're going to put our emphases next. And so as part of our next, couple of next steps beyond the prioritization and identifying the timelines and costs, we have identified regions in the church where we need to think more about it, that we realize it was not built into our original strategic plan, and we're expanding the number of areas from 5 to 7. One of which is we're going to create a committee that will look at our church organizational structure, so that we have, there's actually a viewpoint, a 360-degree view of all the individual groups, as well as for you to understand the church decision-making process and prioritization processes. The idea here is not only just to create transparency, but also potentially to lessen the burden on those who are on these committees, because that really can be a challenge to be on these committees, and so to find a way to broaden the participation. This is our meeting tomorrow. We'll be discussing that. We'll be putting together another subcommittee. Anyway, we also recognize that this was a recommendation of several of the subcommittees to the larger group, and that is we want to put together a group on worship and thinking about how we can think what we need to be able to do in our worship services. I will now put them as a way to make them relevant and meaningful for all. And so one of the things that we're hoping is that you will understand from this presentation, you understand where we are. I hope that you have gotten a little bit of the spirit of the excitement that I think everybody who is on this committee feels. We have named an incredible amount of things that we would like to move forward on, and all of them are focused on that mission. All of them are focused on that mission. And so I invite Becky and Matt, and then for folks to ask any questions as they need.
Rather than sum up, I would rather address any questions that folks have at this time, because it's getting fairly.
Yep. There, you want me to run and do that?
Tasha?
I just have a couple comments. One is, wow, lots of great hard work. I mean, congrats to everyone here that stayed and everyone that's working on this, because we can see the progress. We know it's a lot of work. So I think we all appreciate that. Two comments. One, I know we talk is one of our thoughts is we have an aging population. And there's a lot of talk about the young population, which of course will become the aging one day. But I don't want to forget the aging as we're looking ahead. So I think things like email only, and I'm considering myself in the aging population already, but I think we also have to have still here and there some hard copy things for people that don't access email, don't have a phone that texts, or I think we have to, so we still, in my mind, have to include it all until we get to a point when most of us here are probably gone and the young people are the only ones left, and that's the only way people do things. But I could see a lot of people thinking in their minds, I'm thinking like email, I don't have it, I don't have a printer, I can't print the whole thing, whatever those things are. So just, yes, minimize. So that's one comment. Another comment that strikes me is that I think it would be a great exercise for everyone that's come here who has this strong belief in this church to send in the top 3 reasons they are part of this church. Because I think we don't want to lose sight. Let's just say, for argument's sake, at the end of this, it was decided that church is going to be now on Tuesday mornings at 10:30, and it's only going to last 10 minutes, and we're going to do something. I mean, that ends up being the committee's decision, and so that's radical. But maybe one of the reasons you come here is because church is still on a Sunday morning. Maybe because it's at 10 o'clock. Maybe because of the good mission work we do or don't do. Maybe it's because we have a pipe organ. Maybe they would decide, let's sell the organ because we need money. Well, maybe people come because they want to hear the organ. I think those are things that would be interesting for the strategic committee just to opine on and reflect and say, okay, we maybe don't want to lose sight of that, or gosh, lots of people said this, and we hadn't thought of that yet. So I just throw that out as an idea, but really great work here.
Okay. One thing you said is the committee will do it. This committee is making recommendations. The ones that decided are the things we have already in place, the church council, etc. This committee is not saying we're doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just wanted to make that.
Thank you.
Jessica?
Jessica?
I want to take an opportunity to share with you guys. I was at annual conference last week, and I was there. Matt, Becky, Faith, and Chris were all there. And one of our teaching sessions, I was sitting at a table with Becky, Faith, and my dad. And every 2 minutes, we were looking at each other saying, oh my gosh, I feel like God is hitting me over the head with a 2x4. Our one teaching session was about strategic planning. It was talking about looking at your missions of the church, and it was looking at what are you at your core, and going back. And one of the things he said that really struck me, and I was like, oh, we don't like to do that, but I think it's the reality, is he said, if you haven't gotten rid of a program or adjusted a program in the last 3 years, you're not growing. You are not leaving room for growth. And instead of taking a minute and saying, this isn't doing its purpose anymore, let's adjust and leave room as new things come about, as new opportunities come about. We just keep piling it on, but yet our number of volunteers keeps shrinking and shrinking. But through this whole thing, he's like, so I want you to go back to your churches and share this, and you need to go back to your churches and meet together and do this. And we just looked at each other, and I kept going, okay, God, we hear you. This is the direction that you were calling us to be. So I think for me, that was really affirming that we are stepping in the right direction. We are following the path that God has led for us, and to continue to do his work and to share his love with everybody. So that was really, really powerful for me. So I wanted to be able to share that. And if you have the opportunity, I also encourage you to go, it's online, some of the things from annual conference, because even when our bishop spoke, it just reaffirmed to me what we're doing at this church and what God is calling us to do. So I just really want to encourage you to take that opportunity and really reflect on that, especially as we are asking for people to step up, find a place that you feel called, that your gifts are, and to step up and be a part of that.
I want to point out that we had 3 people turn in contact cards. New people visiting provided us with contact information. We had 2 more last week. People are recognizing us. It's not all, we're not stagnant. People are looking into us. Our efforts, whether they're old efforts or new efforts, they're bearing fruit. We're not sinking. We are moving forward.
Other questions?
The Mission Fund Drive. What are the thoughts behind it? Are you just thinking of asking the congregation for money, or is there going to be a back side to it? a way to bring money in for the mission funds, a way to do it, other than just asking the congregation for money. Are there thoughts on that? Who's on the finance?
To answer your question, yes, there are thoughts on it. It is
Okay.
not full-blown. This is, as this is an interim report, we're calling it a mission fund drive. In older days, we might have called it a capital fund drive. It's for both building and program, and it's not fully formed yet. So how we will advertise it, what we will be asking for, what we will be saying this is paying for, is not yet there.
Okay. Just curious whether there's going to be some kind of a background.
But
Yeah, so
I mean, it's addressing both the fact that we have an aging building, we have an aging congregation, we want to go in new directions in ministry.
And one of the things that we hope to be able to do is to leverage other funds with the funds contributed by our congregation. So in many cases, when we're looking at grants, there has to be a matching contribution. And so that's why the whole point of identifying all the needs, trying to align those with our mission, vision, and goals, and then putting those together into missional packages, if you will, that we can then try to supplement not only with our church's congregational funds, but also with external grants. Again, this is an interim report, but that's the direction we're going. The horizon's still a little further down the road. Bob, I think you were.
I'm assuming we have membership records from, I'll say, 4 or 5 years ago, before the pandemic. And we could certainly compare those to our present kind, because there are people who are left behind, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to a few of them, and what are you guys doing there? And we don't come anymore. Somebody should reach out and at least make an attempt.
That's
And
what
maybe,
we're asking for.
well, maybe 1 or 2 people might be interested, but let's do that first and make sure we don't eliminate anybody that's just kind of fallen by the wayside because of the past few years.
Right.
Another question, if you don't mind, I got this in my hand, so I'll keep talking. Spark is a group of new people or existing members?
It's both, because you need people, right, to start up a new ministry, but we're reaching out and have many new people who have come into the church. So, people connect in all different ways to the Spirit and to a community, a faith-based community. So we have a beautiful traditional service, and there are people who I don't connect that way. I'm looking also for an alternative type of worship. So it's got Bible study, it's building community, it is looking, and now we will have another worship service Friday evenings at 5:30, one day a month.
So maybe it's me, but I don't think a lot of people know about Spark. I mean, it would be good to let everybody know what Spark is all about, and because that's the future.
It is.
Right?
I believe that is where the Holy Spirit is taking us.
I think that's the future.
So, and I want to make it clear, it's not to disrupt our beautiful traditional service.
And it's open to everybody, right?
It's open to anyone who supports what Spark stands for in our values.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is there any,
Keep going, Bob.
sorry,
No, good.
what time it is. Any thought about the preschool? I know they're enhancing membership now, and I've heard that there's many more children going to come in. Is there any thought about enhancing it even more? I mean, it's kind of a boutique preschool program, a couple hours a day, and is that possible? Is it a way of?
Jessica's moving towards you because she
Right, but I
is
still
the
have a
chair of the
microphone, so-
preschool. 1, 2, 3, 4, go.
That could be, I think, a huge program.
It is.
It would then generate money, to be honest with you. But maybe the building is not, so, go ahead.
So here is part of the problem and why we keep it at a maximum of under 4 hours. If we go over 4 hours, we have to abide by Office of Child and Family Services. And coming from the background in a daycare setting that has to do that, we don't want to have to do that. It costs a lot of money in order to do that. There are lots of regulations that we would have to abide by. There would have to be a lot of work done to the building in order to get to that. What we're finding, so for number-wise, we had about 40 kids this past year. Coming into September, we have over 70 children with a wait list for almost every single class. That includes a full 4-year-old class. And we're competing against UPK, but what we're hearing from families is when they start with us at 2, they don't want to leave when their kids get to 4 because they love the program, they love the teachers. A lot of these families are just looking for a few hours a day. They're not looking for a full-time program, which also helps us keep our tuition costs down, which is also what parents are looking for. So yes, we've looked at, well, what if we extended our program? The issue is there's a lot of costs and red tape that come with that, in all honesty, we don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not, and so our program, one of the things that we are bringing back because we have discovered that it's been lacking is the faith element. So Becky started this year going into the classrooms and spending some time. Myself, along with 2 other members of the committee, are actually writing a Christian ed curriculum that the teachers are then going to be implementing. So also, Dawn, who is teaching our 4-year-old class, but is also our program director, she and I have talked at length about a lot of things, and we already have on the calendar a co-sponsored event between the church and the nursery school, which has been lacking. And that's why there's been such a disconnect, because they feel like they are them, we feel like we are us. And there hasn't been this connection. So that's something that, as I took over as chair of nursery school, that I was bound and determined to build up. And Dawn is very receptive to that. She wants the same thing. We're talking about doing something like welcoming the teachers back and having a dinner for them that the church sponsors, for them to know that we are here as support for them. I think we have to remember they are a mission of us, and they need to feel that we are there to support them. And they haven't necessarily felt that way, so we're really trying to bridge that gap. But like it was mentioned, there is a significant profit, I guess, from their budget that will get fed into the general church budget. Just so you know, the nursery school is going to run on a budget from September through August. It does not make sense for us to have them budget starting in January. So their budget will look a little different than ours, but at this point, come August, then there's going to be money that is directly into our general fund from them because they're not sucking money from us, which is the way it should be.
Can you speak in the microphone? Only because those online
We're
with
online.
us.
We're online.
Do we know if the preschool makes money? Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
How much? Do we know how much?
This year, we're looking at least a $20,000 profit from now, they have not in the past few years. There have been some things, but one of the things we're also looking at is we're dealing with increases in minimum wage, things like that. So Dawn actually sat down with my dad, and she sent him preliminary budgets. He helped her through that, then it went to finance. So this is an actual budget, and Dawn runs an outside business and has done budgeting in the past, so she also was very, I'm saying 20,000 and I'm going on the low end. I can tell you that what her actual budget looks like is more. Did you have something to say back there? No. Okay. You just looked like you had something to say. The actual budget is much better. Yeah, is much better than 20. I'm going on the safe side because we know things happen. Same thing, this year we had to reopen a couple of classrooms, which needed work, and that came out, we told her that needs to come from your budget for some of the things that needed to happen there. So, yes and no. The past few years, especially with COVID, we were hurting. With the nursery school, we're in a completely different direction. We're under different leadership there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting signals from a couple different places that the time has expired. And I'm planning to drive to Cleveland from here, so for my grandson's birthday party this afternoon. So I'm glad to have it end. But unless there is a burning question that must be asked right now, let's close in prayer. Let's pray. God, we are thankful for you, for your guidance, for all that you motivate us to do and the ways that you give us to underpin those motivations. We thank you for leadership that has come on board, that is renewed, that has been restored. We thank you for people who are coming back and people that we know we want back. We ask your help in identifying those people. We ask that you will give us motivation, energy, wisdom, vision for all the work that we have to do together, and that you will bring us back together to serve you and to worship you in the time to come. All this we place in your hands. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for coming. You'll get an email with the email address to send to us, as well as access to the presentation.